even if they offer the technology as with a free license or something like that. We've seen enough cases of where companies change their mind, change their business model, and do what we call a rug pull and take that technology or change the license in a way that the rest of the industry cannot use it. So neutrality is important. Of course, this is one of the things that the Linux Foundation offers. The second one also may seem obvious, IP clarity. Basically, it means a license, and to be successful, the preferable approach is to have a permissive license. And it's very important to have a clear license, and it's even better if this is one of the more permissive ones, not the copyleft one, are more restrictive. But at least have some kind of license. I mean, having your code there in the repo is not enough to even qualify as open source. And then the third pillar is this open governance and bureaucracy, and this is what we focus on facilitating at the Linux Foundation. We make sure that there is a clear process for anyone who wants to contribute to the project and for the rest of the community to do peer evaluation and to integrate those contributions and to do it in a way that is not kind of controlled by some tyranny or dictated from the top, but is more grassroots and the result of the outcome of the work of a community. And we give the communities all the necessary tools and mechanisms to help make those decisions about what goes into the code, about how to vet proposals, and how to make sure this machine works and really not just works, but continues to grow and become broader. And then the fourth pillar, I think, is something that is maybe less intuitive, but there needs to be a financial support system. And what I mean by that is not necessarily people paying for developers, which is one way that sometimes work, but really successful projects have some kind of a commercial ecosystem where the technology is being used in some commercial product or service. So think about Kubernetes, for example. One of the reasons it's successful is because companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft use them, or Red Hat offers a commercial version for on-premise, but there is some kind of a viable commercial use case for the technology, and people care about it, people want to be involved, people see opportunities to be employed by those companies, people see opportunities to launch new startups in this domain, and that really drives a lot of the contribution when there is such a commercial ecosystem. So think about, even from the UC perspective, successful initiatives like Ceph by Seyed in UCSC, or Ali Godsin with Apache Spark at Berkeley that became the foundation of Databricks. They started something, but they, I guess, immediately saw that there's a commercial opportunity to make business around it. And what I'm going to talk about is a project OCUDU and how we apply all these principles to this project. So what's the weird name? This will be the most technical slide, I guess. Even if you don't care about wireless and cellular technology, you should probably continue listening, because you might learn a thing or two, and I promise not to talk too much about wireless technology. But basically, this project implements in an open source fashion what is called the CU, the Central Unit and Distributed Unit of Radio Access Network of cellular networks. And this is an architecture that was defined by an industry alliance called the Oran Alliance. And this piece was basically missing before that project was launched. There was no available open source implementation of this piece. There were many commercial ones, and this is kind of the history of this openness in radio access cellular networks. What existed for many years is that closed system that you see on the left, where there are a few large vendors offering their commercial products, and there, of course, that didn't really create a lot of competition and didn't bring a lot of innovation. So that alliance I briefly mentioned created that architecture for openness, but it's not open source, it's just open interfaces. And what we're trying to do with OCUDU is bring it to the open source implementation world and really create a reference implementation available to researchers and anybody who's building projects on products on this technology. And the big push for the launch of OCUDU came from the US government, the Department of Defense, or Department of War as they like to be called, but it started in the DoD days, so I'll stick to the DoD terminology. And what they decided to do is to fund the initial contribution of code through an RFP that they issued, but with the intention of creating this platform for innovation that is predominantly US-based and also has dual use, can be used both for civilian uses and also for their kind of more defense scenarios. So what they did is they, as I said, funded the initial contribution of code from one company called SRS with the intention of creating what they dubbed as the Linux kernel of radio access networks. And the idea is to follow in the footsteps of the success of things like the Linux kernel or the Kubernetes ecosystem and really create a thriving ecosystem around this technology that will drive innovation and, of course, be as much as possible US-centric because, as some of you know, innovation in 5G and 6G generations of wireless technology tended to shift away from North America to other parts of the world, and not everybody liked that trend. So at least the DoD are trying to change course here with their kind of putting their foot on the scale and funding some work that is North American centric. So what is the foundation? In addition to that creation of initial code base that was funded by Department of Defense, what we've helped create is an ecosystem of companies. We actually established the OEF, the OCUDU Ecosystem Foundation, that has members from all these type of organizations. On the left side, it's mostly the government organizations that are either they are either representing end users of the technology, like the Department of Defense, or oversight. In this case, the NSC was chosen by the Department of Defense to run the project and serve in oversight capacity, and we are working in close alliance with the organizations on the left, like the Oran Alliance and ATIS. And on the right, what we brought into this foundation is those types of organizations like vendors of radio equipment and research and academia that we think will play a big role in defining the next generation of wireless communication through innovation on open source. So why do we think we set up OCUDU for success? By the way, it was launched not so long ago, announced on this March and at the Mobile World Congress. But we feel we kind of checked all the marks with those 4 pillars I mentioned at the beginning. There's IP clarity. The license is an OSI license. There is some challenge with radio technology that is heavily patented, so we couldn't use the plain old BSD3 closed license, and there's a variant of that that is used in cases where the technology is patented. It just makes it clear to the end user that they're not getting a license to use the patent and they should license it separately. But basically, other than that, it's a very permissive license. You can do anything you want with the code. Neutrality, we set up all the mechanism, steering committee, board of directors, and everything that will run this project in a neutral form without one company or one organization being dominant. There is a clear process for contributing and affecting the roadmap and getting involved in this project. And finally, for the financial support system, I think, again, I think that's the key differentiator. What we made sure from the get-go, from the launch of this foundation, is that we have players from both the government and other end users, the cellular operators that are other type of commercial, civilian end users. We brought in network equipment vendors like Nokia, Ericsson, and Samsung, which is not very intuitive because they sometimes see these kind of technologies as competing with their commercial products. But I think they have enough experience with open source these days to realize it's better for them to join forces and maybe see what they can leverage it from it instead of reinventing the wheel. And in terms of researchers, as I said, and as you saw on this government slide, the idea is to use OCUDU as a catalyst for innovation and defining the next generation of cellular networks. And for that, we expect research and academia to play a big role. So we reached out to all these institutions you see on the right initially. From the UCs, UCSD was approached, and they are indeed now members of this foundation, but it's open for any other organization. And this is what we see are the roles of research institutes. And basically, as I said, in a nutshell, it's to innovate and develop the next generation of cellular communication based on this technology, with something that was not very possible before because there was missing piece. There was no good implementation of this piece that the OCUDU project brings. And as you probably know, it's always challenging to get academia to contribute to open source because people finish their tenure or students graduate, and sometimes code is hard to sustain after that. So what we're trying to do in the OCUDU ecosystem is kind of match researchers and industry players, startup or larger companies, and so that there will be continuity even after the researchers have finished most of their work. There will be an industry player that is still interested in that. And for that, we kind of started prototyping a platform for academia and industry players to find each other and find mutual interest and kind of decide together what they want to work on, ensuring there will be a good diversity of entities working on a certain functionality or feature, so it will not be just researchers that might at some point move to the next thing. So this is kind of just in an alpha phase, but this is some idea we're trying to apply to the OCUDU ecosystem. So to summarize, as I said, code is not enough for a successful project. You need much more than that. Neutrality is super important. Nobody likes to contribute to something that seems to be dominated by one or two players. And the more inclusion you have of stakeholders and members of the industry, the better you set up the project for success. And as I said, nobody works for free. And although there might be a notion that open source is mostly developed by hippies that do it for the sake of humanity, it's not. We have the research department within the Linux Foundation does surveys from time to time, and the numbers of the percentage of maintainers being employed is a huge percentage compared to those hobbyists or individuals. It's in the 90+% people who are employed, and their employer needs that open source technology. And with that, I guess I'm out of time. So I'll take questions in the panel section later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranny. And yes, as Ranny mentioned, as a reminder, we are going to hold questions until the facilitated discussion portion. So if you have one for one of the speakers, please jot it down or tuck it away somewhere. We will swing back to those. Okay, our next speaker is Yahya Shirazi from UC San Diego. Yahya is an assistant project scientist and PI at the Schwartz Center for Computational Neuroscience, Institute for Neural Computation. I take it that's a sub-center of the Schwartz Center, is that right? Oh, the other way around. Institutional hierarchy. It's different everywhere. And yeah, I will switch over the slides here. Yahya is going to talk about an AI-powered approach to providing domain-specific support to open source users.
Thank you. And yeah, let's see. I hope that it works. Yeah, it works. Yes, my name is Yahya Shirazi, and I'm from the Schwartz Center for Computational Neuroscience. I basically I have several hats. We have one of the longest lasting open source software in neuroscience called EEG Lab. It has like about 20,000 community members. And for the past 20 years, we also host a national archive for brain signals. It's about 40, 50 terabytes now. and hosted at UCSD and shared with the San Diego Supercomputer Center. And I'm also part of a BITS group, which is Brain Imaging Data Structure, not this BITS, another BITS, which is, I don't know which one is older, but it's like 10 years old now. How old? Yeah. What? Yeah, exactly. So that's like the Stanford group, but then it's now really truly international on how to design basically structures for data. So if you want to share it, share, everybody understands it. It's like a fair implementation. And there's a reason why I talked about all of that. The Open Science Collective, which actually came up from last year here, is the idea of basically we know, and especially for human neuroscience, it's the case that our open source research is always underfunded. It is usually like one maintainer maintaining the whole stack. It's true for EEG Lab, for MNE Python, for Brainstorm, for any like human neuroscience. Basically, it's just one maintainer. And there is another problem. Basically, probably the solution would be just if you have like a 0.1% of all grants going to open science, then you will have a lot more money to maintain everything, not just with one person. So if that person is being recruited, which happened to for MNE Python, the leaders went to Roche and Meta. So now it's just like a 0.5% trying to do all the jobs. So then we're gonna have a more sustainable system if we have just an open, just an overhead, very small overhead. And the other part that I'm gonna talk about now is like basically if there are stacks that can be shared across communities, then we can just develop it into this open science collective or in this collective measure, and everybody can use it. So for example, we could do like what I'm gonna talk about with your community as well, like that you can have a platform that has a chatbot, has an assistant that is open source, and the onboarding of your community is gonna be just one YAML file and a one PR, and everything is gonna be pulled together. And I'm gonna just talk about how that works. So for having a chatbot that is grounded and researchers trust, there are a lot of friction points. Some of them are coming from the reasoning or the fact that it is for the communities that are very slow on AI and the part that the general AI is not a good solution. One is that our communities and open source communities, we have a lot of documentation, but docs rot. And we have like forums that are overloaded with 20 years of mailing lists, for example. On the other side, AIs hallucinate and they do not provide the current, for example, like versions of our documentation. Again, when I tried to find something that can help me with like 3 communities that I maintain to make a assistant for it, I didn't find one. On the other side, basically the AI is moving, the AI often lacks citations, often lacks or cannot find the source of truth really easily. And in the end, we always have like new users that they always ask the same question. And even like if you have FAQs, still they ask the same questions without going to the FAQs. And the other part, on the other side, which is like a huge problem for our researchers, is that they do not trust AI as their like chat assistant. So how we could basically resolve this in a way that researchers get what they need, basically having a precise citation-back answers from the tools, but also try to use AI in between without the creativeness of the AI. And the answer is like this, the OSA, the Open Science Assistant, is basically like a part of the answer, and I'm gonna go into detail on how we try to resolve it. But right now, we have like 7 communities that are onboarded. The bits, the other bits, EEG Lab, Field Trip, HED, which is a standard for event descriptions for neuroscience, which is a taxonomy as well. And Meta BCI is from China, and they wanted to come in, and they are more than welcome. MNE Python and NEMAR. NEMAR is the archive that we maintain for the brain data as well. Still, every one of them is just one YAML, and every one of them is just basically asking Claude, hey, this is my resource, this is my GitHub repo, and these are my papers, for example, canonical papers. Create a YAML, and it just creates a YAML. It's like 10 minutes. So how it works and why it is not a RAG, just a RAG system. So basically, when a researcher asks a question, there is an embeddable widget, which is like open source. Everything is open here. And then that basically sends the question to an edge worker. The edge worker just makes sure that it is a bot protection. Not everybody just types, or a bot types and tries to overwhelm the system, and makes sure that there is rate limits. But then basically after that edge worker, there's a fast API and line graph. So basically a multi-agent system that tries to understand the documentation, and then if there is a need for a database call, we go and find like our knowledge sources from the database, and comes back and just does it multiple times based on the question, and then gives you the answer. And as you can see, the sources can be a GitHub, the documentation, papers, mailing lists, which is actually a pretty nice one because EEG Lab has a 24 years of worth of mailing lists that are basically graveyard. But now I just basically, this can build a live FAQ from it. So finds the questions and finds the right answers, and then grade the answers, and then creates an FAQ or in the database for it. And then also discourse servers, all of them are onboarded. So you can just, if you have a discourse server, it can come in and basically become part of this database. Everything is like basically there is boundaries between the communities, so they do not leak to each other. But at the same time, there is also a project so the communities can talk to each other. So there is an arena of agents. So if I ask a question about the software, but then it is related to the data, for example, it knows that, oh, there is a data agent. So let's go and ask that and find the right data and then basically bring it over. So basically what is happening, so basically, like, again, to follow up, I think, so the sources that we sync are GitHub, doc, papers, mailing lists, and FAQs. Every PR or issue that you create can trigger a re-indexing, so you know everything about the PRs that are created. You can follow up and ask the questions about them. You can also trigger that like every day, which is, I think we found is more sustainable to know, so GitHub will not kill you with multiple like continuous basically triggering of their system. It is very highly like efficient. Anthropic has a caching system that gives you 90% discount. The default model is Anthropic because interestingly it is very cheap if you use it correctly. So we do like more than 90% of our system calls are cached. So we basically beat any open source API calls. And the reason that we are not like local, do not do local inference is that we cannot beat the speed and accuracy of like, I think like for now, the paid models. But at the same time, these are really, it becomes really cheap. It's just basically, I think every community or any community that we are hosting right now out of the 7, I think it's like less than $5, and they have like 100 questions, at least like for EEG Lab per day, that people come and ask questions, 100 people. We can have per community budget gaps and maintainer alerts if they are hitting that. And the status page for every community is actually live as well. So you can go and see like how many questions people ask or what tools it was used and so forth. So as I mentioned, the YAML file is just one single one that basically you mention it, and then basically everything gets orchestrated in the background, and that just includes identity and model choice, which is like you can see here. It is like, for example, this is for EEG Lab, and then links that drives the knowledge sync. So what are the home pages, or what are the what are the GitHub accounts that you want to have them as synced here. And then even on the widget, you can have the name, the suggested questions, the message, And you can have the maintainers, and this is my boss, that's why I put his name on top, Arnold Delorme. So who is the maintainer, and who should get, for example, like a limit, a trigger of the limit that, hey, like your $5 of the day is done, so charge again, or something like that. So yeah, and we never get to $5 per day, so but at the same time. And you can have like different budgets and so forth. And then basically your system prompts, which is basically how you want the AI understand or look into your basically knowledge base. It usually is very long. It's like about 1,000 words. And then usually overall, our system prompt when it is built with all the required documentation is about 20,000 words. But at the same time, 20,000 tokens, not words. But at the same time, the call cost when it is cached is 0.1 cent. So not even 1 cent for every question that people ask. So again, just if you have a community that wants to be onboarded, is just one PR, which creates the assistant, the API routing, and the widget and the knowledge sync. So then you can just put the widget which is just 3 lines into your website. It becomes under like the bottom right of your website, and you can enjoy it. So a lower part of statistics, EG Lab, for example, like this is, I think we launched it in February or something. We have like about 1,500 questions. We have also success rates as well. Sometimes like things disconnect, so there is that. And we usually like peak at about 100 questions per day, and it usually goes up when we have workshops. And we have like 6 other communities that are live, and there is actually like some debate whether they want it. Like the maintainers want it because they do not want to answer questions, but the community doesn't want it because they want to ask questions, and from the maintainers is a very interesting challenge there. And MNE actually, like the PR is like so long. With the maintainers, yes, let's commit, let's merge the PR so it is going up to the MNE Python, and the community say no, we do not want that. So it's a very interesting debate. So if you want to come in, just have Open Science Collective /OSA on GitHub, so the repository, and create a PR. Again, just one file change. And for the documentations, you can go to the docs.osa.earth. And the reason that is .earth because there wasn't any other one, OSC, sorry. There is not other one that has OSC. So please bring your community and basically file the issue or drop your question in the Discord, and we will be there for you and to help. And I'm at 13 minutes. So yeah, thank you. Yep. Oh, just because I'm just a little early. No. I can hijack that. So this is EG Lab, and this is like how it looks like. Basically, if you, I don't know who knows ICA, what ICA is, but it says like, hey, I'm gonna go fetch ICA tutorial from the documentation, and it will create that. And if you need, I don't know, make it a little larger, it just becomes larger, and then you can see, and then you can continue talking to it. So that's about it. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, thank you so much. We have one more talk in this particular session before we launch into discussion. And I have here, okay, I was gonna say, you look different than the speaker bios. One of you matches. Okay, so you are Silas. Okay, Silas Santini, is that right? And Rebecca Dang. Okay, amazing. Well, I might let you do more of a self-intro, but since I am not prepared for this plot twist. But I am really excited for this talk because they're going to talk about using continuous integration to uphold accessibility standards, which I think is so cool. I've had students who've worked on accessibility features for open source projects, so I'm really excited to hear you share about your work. I'm going to pull up your slides right now. And you are from Berkeley. I can say that much, right? Okay.
Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Rebecca. I am an imposter. This is not Michael Ball. He unfortunately could not come today, but yeah, happy to be here and present our work on using continuous integration to ensure accessible experiences. And then, Silas, do you want to do a quick intro? Oh.
Rebecca is a grad student.
Oh, yes, I forgot.
I'm full-time staff here at Berkeley.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, you might be wondering, why do we care about digital accessibility, and specifically, why is accessibility important right now? Well, there's kind of two pillars of this. One of them is that we are legally obligated to have accessible websites and content. So you may have heard about the accessibility deadline that I think was supposed to be this Friday, but then it got postponed. But then, of course, there's still like the HHS deadline for Section 504, and then there's like Section 508 for other US federal agencies, and I believe that's May 11th. So the deadline is still coming up, and I think a lot of people, myself included, as someone who has TA'd for many courses, are kind of like scrambling to like make our course websites and like slides and PDFs accessible. So it's important to even determine like what materials do you have are accessible and which aren't. And then, of course, there's the social obligations, right? Like, it's just the right thing to do to have accessible content, which benefits everyone, not just people with disabilities. For instance, if you don't like using your mouse and you just like to tab through things, that's a nice feature to have. And the good news is we don't need to be accessibility experts ourselves. There are other people who have figured out what makes a website accessible, and standards like WCAG have figured out how to make things accessible and what the rules and regulations are for that. Okay, so the other good news is that there are tools like AXCore, which is a web accessibility engine that has hundreds of rules covering all of these things, such as like ARIA labels, whether your website is compatible with a screen reader, color contrast, sizing, forms, images, alternative text, structure, and navigation. And it kind of follows the overall accessibility principles of being perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So you can kind of think of AXCore as this like specific implementation, because you might be saying, like, Rebecca, what does it mean for something to be operable? But AX kind of tells you that. And we're going to go into the tool that we built in order to help detect accessibility issues. So where does the continuous integration kind of factor in here? Well, at UC Berkeley, a lot of our courses, especially in the electrical engineering computer science department and the data science department, have custom course websites as opposed to putting course content on an LMS such as Canvas. And so for a lot of courses, the way that TAs will post new assignments or professors will post lecture materials is that they'll have this course website, they'll make a pull request, and then now with our CI workflow, we can use GitHub Actions in order to run these accessibility tests using AXCore. And then assuming all goes well and the CI checks pass, then we can merge the PR and like auto deploy it using GitHub Pages. And the nice thing is that you run these accessibility checks locally before you deploy, and it also runs every time you can also adjust that accordingly however you want, such as like every day or manually triggering the GitHub action. So the benefits of this approach are that you are able to test your entire course website at scale and not just do like single pages at a time. You can see overall passing and failing or passing and failing for a particular page. And the failures are descriptive, right? It's not like opaque and you're like, I have to hunt down where the accessibility error is happening. You can see clearly from the error messages what's going wrong and maybe even how to fix it. Or like, for instance, providing links to what this rule violation actually means. And then the other nice thing is that we have awareness of like light and dark mode for our course website template. And you can display this nice badge on your GitHub README of whether you're currently passing or failing accessibility tests. Okay, so let's walk through an example of how someone might use the tool that we built. So suppose that you are a TA or a professor and you're, spoofing up your syllabus, and maybe you wrote some HTML or like Markdown, in this case, since we're using just the docs as our theme. And you have these headings, so you have about, lecture, and resources, but notice from the screenshot that they are kind of at different heading levels. So we have heading 1, heading 3, and heading 2. And for someone who is using like a screen reader, this is like kind of confusing because you're skipping levels and like moving up and down. And so you can run the accessibility checks locally using the kind of like Ruby RSpec test wrapper that we have built using a single command, which is just bundle exec RSpec. It's just running your regular old Ruby unit tests. And what it will do is that it will kind of scan through your sitemap, and then it will also check the accessibility of each page in both light mode and dark mode. So you can kind of see here, we have when light mode and when dark mode. And at the top, it kind of displays this summary of like, does it meet the WCAG requirements? Specifically for our tests, we check for WCAG 2.1 and 2.2, but you can configure this if you like. And then you can see here that we have some failures in the syllabus page. And the other nice thing is that it even takes a screenshot of that page, which is useful, especially for errors that are more like visual, such as color contrast. Okay, and then kind of zooming in, this is the kind of more detailed output. And you can kind of see here that, oh yes, we can zoom in one more time. And, thanks, Silas. And you can kind of see here that the error is exactly what we expected, which is that the heading order has a violation where the heading levels should only increase by 1, and it even says like, oh, this is a moderate severity error, which is useful, I think, for prioritizing which errors to kind of address first. And you can even see like what specific HTML. There's a link to documentation explaining this error and why it's bad, how to fix it. So this is very useful for TAs and professors to kind of resolve these issues on their own in a kind of like decentralized fashion. Okay.
So if you want to know how that actually works, the script is just simulating a user in a headless Chrome browser, so you don't actually have to see the Chrome browser. It's just kind of happening in the background. And then AxCore is auditing the HTML. And you get to choose exactly which standards you want. You don't have to go to the highest standard. You can go for just the base, or you can do a little bit more. It's really just dependent on what you want. It's all editable. But you can't check everything with automated testing. So I just want to like flag that here. You can't know how good your alt text is. There have been times when I've audited a website, I've been like, oh, okay, it's passing all the checks. And then I go and I look and I see, oh, every single alt text is just the file name. And that really is not meeting the true like spirit of the standards. And you can also make sure that like the logical reading order is there. And so there's just some things to like still be aware of. I really like our workflow because the accessibility concerns are raised just in time. So if you do open a pull request, the GitHub action happens right away. You see the output, and then you get to decide, do I need to make a change? Do I need to make a different commit? Or can I merge? Can I deploy my website? Am I good to go? On GitHub, so in the case where you've pushed your code, this is what it looks like when you're successful. This is just the Actions tab for this specific workflow. And in this case, it's successful, it's working, no problem. I went ahead and made a site just so that way it would not work. And I'm gonna tab through here. I wish I could do a demo, but I was a little bit worried about it, so I just took a bunch of screenshots. So you just click on the failing action, you click on the failing job. Within the job, you click on the failing step. Do you get the pattern? And you see the exact same output that you would see locally. So it's looking through each of the single pages for both light mode, dark mode, for the different standards, and then it tells you, okay, here's the problem. It was the heading order. It was a moderate severity. Again, here's the link. Here's the actual element that was being problematic. And it will, show up with the failure. And so you'll see the failure right away, pretty fast. You don't have to use our specific workflow. You're like, I don't use your course site template. I don't have a Ruby website. If you have something different, you can absolutely apply these principles to any GitHub repo. You can go ahead and check for accessibility on Jupyter notebooks. And so this is just an example of how to do that based on like one of the posters outside about the Jupyter Lab Ally Checker. And so you can, if your repo has Jupyter notebooks, all you have to do is put in this check and it will look for every single notebook and tell you whether or not you're following the standards. You can also go ahead and do this for other kinds of sites. You can do it for, I use Quarto, I use Mist, I use JupyterBook, and so you can have the exact same process. And if you want to look at an example for how this works with Mist, here's the action, the link to the action. The important thing for me in my everyday with this is that we're able to implement these actions for, and like maybe these numbers aren't crazy impressive, but I want you to think about we're deploying it for 12 course websites 3 times a year, and each course website is going to have its own repository, and each textbook is going to have its own repository. And I've got to work with tens of teaching assistants every single semester, and there's going to be new teaching assistants every single semester. And then in the case of like software engineering coursework, hundreds of students that are interacting with creating websites, with creating web apps. And so you can just plug this one thing in and it becomes very visible, very fast, whether or not you're meeting the accessibility standards. And it's really easy to see, is that the case? And then zoom in on any failures. So you don't actually have to become, a nitty-gritty expert. And that is what we have to say. Thank you for listening.
You can stay at the front of the room, actually. Yeah. I want to first say, Rebecca, you are a bonus presenter. You're not an imposter presenter. We are lucky to have you with us. So glad that you could be here. Okay, and then, at this point, our other presenters can please come join us at the front of the room as well. I'm going to start with pulling up our kind of original slide here as a reference point. And then we have a little bit of time, so we have about 22 minutes. So I'm gonna start with one quick maybe question for each presenter to give you a moment to drum up some more, and then we will go to audience questions. Okay, so going back to Ranny's talk, I think you are, okay, perfect. I will pass my microphone on in a moment. I think you are just have a really valuable perspective for this event because you are coming from foundation and industry perspective. So I'm very curious to hear, with your experience on this project, what do you think are like remaining friction points working across the bridge to academia? Like, what can we learn from your experience in that specific way?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think we're trying to do everything we can to reduce friction, but some friction exists by definition. Thing I alluded to, like the fact that researchers are not expected to sustain the technology forever, and it's pretty common that they move to other things. So we don't have a solution for that. We try to provide an approach where maybe someone else will pick up the baton and move it forward. As I said, we're trying to bring a large group of players together, so we have diversity, so not everything in this project hangs upon the work of researchers, and there's a portion of it that is being done by researchers, but it could be transferred later. So I would say we didn't kind of found a silver bullet that solves all the problems, but we try to reduce any friction point that we identified, and that initiative of matching researchers with other researchers or other industry players is something that we just started trying and we think will help. But again, we can kind of eliminate some of the friction point, but some of them will exist, and it's best to be prepared and be aware of them and address issues as they arise. We don't have like a one-size-fits-all solution.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this idea is so interesting of figuring out these connection points of like the early sort of demo you showed of having projects and places that people can find who they should be talking to and working with across. So I hope that we'll see more of that in the future.
Me too.
Okay, Yahya, my question for you, if I can find it. My brain is full of lots of interesting questions right now. Okay, so thinking back to this sort of dynamic way that we can potentially onboard people, which I think is incredibly useful. I think probably all of us can appreciate the way that can help. Where do you think human engagement still matters the most, even if these tools are to a point that they're working perfectly?
To the point means like if they work perfectly, you do not need humans anymore, or?
Well, I don't know. I guess maybe that's the provocative question. Like, if the tool works perfectly, you had alluded actually in your talk to people having resistance at around like certain tasks or exchanges to like they still wanted a human in the loop at certain places. So I'm curious if you have more thoughts on like where that's most important, or maybe you think we get to a point where the tool is so good that we don't need the people. I'm curious.
Yeah, I think this is sometimes like this philosophical question, like the part that I mean probably everyone knows, but so like Newton and his gravity like idea was just like then ask he had God for the parts of inconsistency, and then when those inconsistencies went away, then we said, oh, where is the source of like the role of God here? You probably it is something like we need humans to correct the AI, but if the AI is correct, what is the need for humans? I do not like. I want to say I disagree with the premise altogether. I think we should be prepared for the time that the AI is perfect or does the things perfectly. I think, and some part of the resistance is that we are biased. Again, like this is just from my interactions. We want to know what's our role will be, and the part that we resist because we do not know what our role will be when there is all AI automation on everything, then we just want to reject this premise that we want to accept it. But the problem is that the storm will come, will wash many away, and because we're not prepared and we haven't built our boats or fortresses or so on and so forth. I think our role will become the orchestrators until there is perfect orchestrators as well. But the idea is that where we are given, like I think, like Fernando was talking about, assembly and Python and other stuff. So nobody knows how to do assembly. Little of us or few of us know how to type or work in Fortran, although many of our linear algebra systems are in Fortran and works in Fortran. But we think that because we do Python, we are like really good programmers. But no, we are not, because many of, at least like in my field of computational neuroscience or computation, if you want to really be good programmers, you do things in Fortran. So I think just not to, again, diverge, the part that will probably remain is we are given through time more performant ships or vehicles, from assembly, from the cards that people put in computers, to assembly, to Fortran, to Python, and so forth. And now it is like an agentic tool. We are given these tools, and at every time we steer these ships, And now it becomes a part that we just probably think of something and we just give it that thought and it will steer everything. It's just an autopilot. But still, we should probably be the person who retains the agency for the destination. Probably we just need to also just steer, say, hey, I want to go to point A or to point B, and not even, right now, I give it that I want to go to point A, and here is the path or the likely path. And it actually does that, and it's the least intervention I make usually. But I think like in the end, it's going to be, I'm going to just go to point A, and then from point A, point B, point C, and it will steer everything there. And I think it's fine because again, my perspective is that our highest contribution is our intellectual agency to move I want to say, from one state to the next, not the path that we pave or we walk through from one state to the next. So if we keep that, probably we will be a little content. Sorry.
No, I think that's a great answer. I like this framing around agency, especially. One of my best friends teaches sculpture at a small liberal arts college, and we talk all the time about AI because he's an artist. And this is the piece that he comes back to too, as a creative practitioner, as like talking to his students about agency. So I think that's a lovely cross-cutting idea. Okay, finally, I have a question for Rebecca and Silas. Okay, so I have students who had worked on some accessibility features for Mozilla Firefox DevTools at one point, and they were coming in from the side of like, we're really excited about accessibility. We like really want to get into figuring out how to do this right and work on open source. And then they were hit with like the wall of overwhelm trying to learn about all the specs. They were like, oh, now I have to become an expert on accessibility before I can like help. So I see, like, obviously what you're doing would be a huge help for them. My question is about the flip side, which is I wonder, with the folks you've worked with, if you're seeing having access to this type of tool sparking any kind of curiosity for people who are coming in from the point of I want to just make my stuff, you know, meet the current standards. Are you seeing it spark any curiosity in those people around like, oh, this is why this matters, or now I'm thinking about how I design my website or my materials in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I haven't talked to people about this specifically, but I've definitely experienced it myself because I was pretty new to the realm of web accessibility, like before college. I mean, I knew about alt text, but I think that was basically it when I was learning HTML. Oh, there's an image tag, and oh, there's an alt attribute, but I didn't really know, like, what does it mean to write good alt text? I didn't know how screen readers worked. So I think I definitely agree that having exposure to that helps with the learning process, and then tools like this kind of help make it easier and hopefully less of a chore for people to do things. And it's kind of like demystifying this world, because I think it's difficult maybe for people to have empathy, but then when you kind of like see, oh, like, I see now why different heading levels can be a problem, then you can kind of like build that muscle. Yeah. I don't know, Silas, you have thoughts?
Yeah, there hasn't been perhaps. I think it's okay. Thank you. I haven't really introduced a lot of people to like let's get on board with the accessibility, but it has the visibility of being able to see is this accessible is very interesting, because there becomes a question of like, are the materials that I'm putting together accessible versus is the platform itself accessible? And that's a very more difficult, bigger question. And from the visibility of, hey, everything that I've done appears to be correct, but there's still an underlying issue, has started to drive change in other ecosystems. So people that weren't super interested in accessibility or things like that are now being badgered by people like me to help improve that. And so I do believe that like it is helping get more people aware of, on board with these issues.
without having to like download a screen reader and experience it. Yeah. Which is what I made my students do. And it was an amazing experience, but not everyone's going to do that. Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah. Now we're open for questions. Do you have a question, Chrissy? You can be our first question.
Thank you so much. So my question is, so in the Turing Way community, we have a maintainer who is fully blind and uses a screen reader exclusively. And one of the great catch-22s of accessibility checking is that it is both extremely important for a true expert screen reader user to check what is going on, and also extremely hard if there are accessibility challenges. So I just wanted to sort of, it's very much building on your previous answers, but I'm curious to hear how you sort of think about that with bringing in the real users into checking that. Maybe there are students that participate, or I'm just curious to know how you think about it.
I think that when there are specific needs, here at UC Berkeley, we're very lucky to have I'm going to say fairly good, fairly strong DSP office. That's the Disabled Students Program. And so we are able to talk to others and get additional perspectives when there is a real need beyond just like the general, this is going to be good for everybody, but like we need this for a specific person. As an instructor for Stat 20 here, at one point there was a blind student, and we were able to work with the DSP office and with the like automated tooling in Quarto to like make sure that things were accessible and that we were meeting those specific needs. And I do kind of wish that like Michael Ball was here, because he also has a vision impairment. And so, you know, it's not like the biggest thing, but we are able to bring in additional perspectives and engage with DSP, engage with the accessibility boot camp that happens every year at GitHub in San Francisco, and engage with like accessibility hackathons. There's another one that's happening at GitHub in San Francisco this year. So we have an array of resources and an array of contacts with people that are specifically using these tools for what they're designed for, and not just checking a box.
I wanted to generalize this discussion. I think it's one of the other characteristics of successful open source projects where you have the end users. I think I briefly mentioned it in one of the slides, but nevertheless, I think we're seeing it across all our project portfolio is when end users are involved. And I think open source really gives end users a platform. Instead of back in the old days, you have to do a focus group, collect feedback, go to the product manager, add it to the roadmap, and so on and so forth. But open source really democratizes the playfield and lets those end users just scratch their own itch and improve the technology directly. And that really makes those projects much better when there is large investment from the end users.
That's such a great point. Thank you for adding that. Other questions? It can be a question for the whole panel, by the way, or for an individual panelist. I think I saw in the back.
I'm Dave Rauschberg. This is for Ranny. I mean, incredible program. I'm curious about if there is a plan to facilitate the seeding of reference hardware to the partner institutions like in academia and other research labs, and also how to handle the regulatory aspects of operating ORAN in a non-traditional environment. I looked at the code briefly just now, and it says that USRP devices are supported. Maybe you could speak a little bit to that, because you operate a really interesting spot where stakeholder engagement requires access to the hardware on the edge.
Yeah, so interesting. I just had to step out an hour ago to a meeting with the governing board of the foundation, and this is was one of the main topics, is how to test and integrate this technology and how to integrate it with radio units, with mobile packet cores. So the one thing I keep reminding people is it is an open source initiative, so anybody can come in and create those integrations. So we, as the Linux Foundation, and also the project community, does not limit the technology for working with only certain UEs or radio units or mobile packet cores. It's really open for the community. If somebody wants to integrate with their own unique radio unit or whatnot, they're more than welcome to do so, and they're starting to do so. We have one company, Skylark Ventures, they started expanding this project to support their radio unit. So that's the model. Anybody can come in and create that. In addition, we are trying to, because of the complexity of testing and integrating cellular radios, we are trying to map the available resources across different testing and integration labs, what used to be called OTICs under the ORAN Alliance. Many of them are available for doing testing and integration work for OCUDU. So we're just about to launch a work group that will work on the mapping of all the available resources and figure out how people can start using them to test and integrate what they build on top of the OCUDU software.
Other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, of course.
So I was very interested in the open science assistant, and I was wondering what level of openness is required to use it. For example, if you have a private GitHub repository, is it possible if part of your code base is sensitive that you really don't want shared with an AI agent that might use it in training later on? Can you plug in a different AI agent? Like just general security questions and questions about how open your code has to be in order to use the assistant.
Okay. So, good question. I think the part, it needs to read something. So if it is private, so it is a little hard to read it. But so basically you can steer it to just only portions of your code base, or if you do not want. So it's a good question because I have, for example, repositories that are private, but the help to use it is public. So if you want, for example, there's a CLI right now, it's not public, that we are, for example, for the NEMAR, that people can upload their data to NEMAR, but the code base still hasn't completed security review. So the code base is private, but you can ask questions, but not on the underlyings of basically on the CLI, you can ask questions. On the architecture, you cannot, basically it doesn't have access to that. So that's pretty granular. The default model that it was used and it's been using is it's API calls to Anthropic, but it is through Open Router, so they have a no retention policy, quote unquote. How much you want to believe that? I do not believe that. It's just I think it's just a pipe dream that they do not keep anything. But you can just point it to anything that you want. It's as long as it is basically on the API call that is just you ask answer and you get the question. You ask the answer. You ask the question and you get the answer. It's a fast API basic communication. So I tried it on locals, on local models, on Olama, VLLM, or anything, and it works. The problem with local models is that it takes a long time because it's, for example, it needs about 20,000 tokens. So it needs a lot to digest and then give you an answer. That's the part that takes a minute if you run it on a local model.
Okay, we have time for one more question before lunch, if there's a final question in the room. Oh, I saw a hand, maybe? No? Oh, okay, I did see a hand.
There is a half a hand.
I saw some half hand movement.
So what local models did you use? And second question is that with the Anthropic thing, did you opt out of that little thing that they have that they should not use it? Or is it just a assumption?
No, so I think Open Router opts out. There is a Open Router is for anyone. I think probably knows is an aggregator, and they try with their contract with different providers. They try to always have this that hey, with our API calls, zero retention. Again, I think the only way probably of Anthropic and these big guys not retaining anything is that you run it on basically a Bedrock server. So on the AWS servers or other servers that are not connected to them, in a sense, if there is another backdoor there, which I'm skeptical on that as well. But so that's the part that I'm not. So that's the part I'm trusting. I'm not even trusting because this is an open source. They already have scraped the whole GitHub, so who cares on this part? And I need a cheap, performant model, and they are subsidizing it for now. So I'm happy to use it until like there is an open source model. I used to use the GPT OSS as well from Cerebras. Actually, this was very fast, but at the same time, it was not as good. I haven't tried the newer models. Basically, I have actually made a benchmark for basically asking a battery of questions and also get the answers from like every model that comes out every month or something like that. But haven't tried it like with the Gemma 4 and like the Qwen 3.6. So not yet. But at the same time, the problem is the inference speed as well. So on Gemma 4 and on Qwen, the speed and the consistency of the providers are not as good, and probably I don't know if like the national resource that Fernando mentioned wants to sell a stable like endpoint for these that people can buy actually from it. That would be a very good thing to do because I'm the first customer. I'm gonna be the first customer on that. So yeah, that's my take. I tried. Cerebras went away for GPT OSS. I tried alternatives; they are not stable. So providers for open source models basically just go away in a heartbeat. Because as soon as it is not, I think, financially viable for them, they just go away. So if we have a resource that at least tells us in an email that, hey, we are going away in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks or something, then I think it would be a very useful thing to do. I can do fine tuning as well. So.
We are out of time. I am so sorry. I don't want to keep you from your lunch, so I encourage you to find the presenters over lunch if you'd like to chat more about these topics. Thank you so much for coming.